Hello, and good morning. Welcome to another wonderful day over here. No, I have not had my matcha yet, so yes, I know my voice sounds a little hoarse. If this is your first time with us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. So, Lori, I'm excited for today because we're going to learn lots about Lori today. Yes. That's the way I look at today's adventure because like I always send out the notices, everything, to our, panelists. And I was like, wait a minute, there is no link to a panelist for today's session. It's all Lori. It's an MAA Ask Lori Anything.
It is. Well, I know. So guys start putting questions in the Q&A. Like I said, I promised after, it's funny, Sadie, because a long time ago, before you came on, how this Ask Lori Anything came about was literally, new to showbiz, if we can call it this. I didn't contemplate the fact that a guest may like not show up that morning. And so the very first time the guest didn't show up, I was scrambling and I was like, well, it's me. I give presentations all day. I guess I'm the guest. And then it became so popular that people asked for it. So that's the origin of it. So I never know. It's like it's weird. It's like I always tell Sadie, I go, okay, you know what? We'll end it in 10 minutes if nobody has any questions and you guys always have a topic. So everything is on the table. That's what I like to say. Everything's on the table. You can ask me. We talk about everything on the show, and I always put the guest in the hot seat, as you guys know. So I'll be in the hot seat. So I'm going to go over my beginning and what's happening in my world of webinars, etc. And you guys just think about what you want to talk about, and let's have at it. So, can you believe, first of all, that it's May? And yes, happy Easter, Sarah. I see that. Always, I got all these wonderful names that we know. Sadie and I were talking before we started the show about the names like Chris, and we got Sarah, and we got Tara. We got all these names that we see every single week, and we just love it that you're all here with us. But anyway, okay, so can you believe it's almost May? I can't believe it's almost May. So I finally did my May literacy sessions. I've got that book. I've got the legal structure for my company tomorrow. And Sadie and I still are doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Really, it's about the SBA loans. We talk about any resources, then I talk a bit about unemployment options and stuff like that. But really, the bulk of the questions on our Tuesdays and Thursdays are review of the SBA loan, especially as people are going through the process, how to fill out certain forms, or if you're getting denials. So tune in on those days. Those are the days we talk about it. We were just talking about this before the show as well. There's still such a demand for people that we're going to continue to do that. So that's going to be happening for some time. Next week, I have Tanya Kelly coming on. Tanya Kelly was referred by Dahlia. Everybody knows that name. You got very familiar with the name Dahlia. And she is a CPA and talks a lot about tax strategies. And that's something I get asked a lot. And it's interesting because usually somebody has been on some, YouTube channel and heard about this like bizarre tax strategy. Like it doesn't even make logical sense. And what I always tell people, one of the biggest tax strategy you can have is 401ks, et cetera. And I know we've had somebody on talking about that, but there really is certain things that aren't so clever and mysterious that actually provide very good tax incentives, etc. So I'm really excited to have her on and see what she's going to talk about and maybe add to some of our repertoire on different tax strategies. And then Marcella's coming on at the end of April, and she and her husband own Majestic Bliss Soaps. I learned about them because of the fires applying for loans, and I just thought it was a fantastic story, fantastic company story. So very excited to have them on as well. So that's what we have going on for today. Yes, Nancy, cannot believe it's almost May. Okay, because of the fact that, it's open forum to do anything. I always like to show, I haven't done this in a long time, so those of you that are new, you may not have seen any of this where I share whatever the latest cat pat picture is, right? Everybody knows I have this adventure cat. So here we go. I decided Vabu, everybody knows Vabu that's been here for a while. She needed a pop-up top on her little bike carrier, right? So I figured out how to take a little cage and a little pop-up top and put it together. And you see this cord here? She has an electric blanket on her bike carrier in case she gets cold. She absolutely loves riding on the bike. And now that she can pop her head up and then go down there, she just thinks it's the greatest. So don't think that a cat can't go on a bike. It's not true at all, but I have to definitely make sure that she has all her little happiness in play. And then she
I'm
also,
laughing so hard, Lori.
I know, I know. Well, and then this gets even more ridiculous. The more you see these pictures, like I thought, I'll show you the level of ridiculousness in my life,
Oh
okay?
my God, are you going to show us the menagerie?
Yeah, so here is her stroller, right? And we're sitting outside, and she has this backup. Yes, guys, this is a backup battery that you use in emergency. But the emergency is that she has to keep her heated blanket so she can sit outside and watch the squirrels in her heated blanket. And you see she's got their little rain jacket as well. So she also has a stroller, and she has a backpack and numerous pop-up tents. I mean, she goes everywhere with me.
She's napping, like sitting up.
Yeah, yeah, she is. She just, I just think sometimes I just want to live her friggin' life. Everybody's like, I want to come back as your cat. I'm like, I want to come back as my cat. It's like, oh my God. And then one of our favorite things to do. Okay, so let me find. Oh yeah, you got to see this. And Vabu, okay, you ready? We'll keep on this like laughter thing on it. Vabu and I don't mind the rain. And so you can see us out there. She's got her little rain jacket on. We're touring a park in the middle of a rain, I mean, literally freezing rain. And she's just like, okay, I always say, okay, let's take a picture. Not time to take a picture. So yeah, that's my cat. Okay, guys. So with that little fun, let's get into, oh yeah, entrepreneurship at work providing us cat carriers for our bicycles. Absolutely. Yeah, I literally take her everywhere but the grocery store. We did get thrown out of one hardware store. Can you believe they'd throw a cat in a bag?
Wait, I've never heard the story.
Yeah, we did. We were out, some young kid said that I had to take my pet outside. Excuse me, my pet? I don't have a pet. I have my beloved baby with me. What do you mean, my pet? Okay, that's delusional. I know, I know. How many people are laughing at me right now? I'm sure.
She's just a little hairy. That's all
Yeah,
good.
exactly. But yeah, she lives the life. She definitely does. And it's funny because we go to this coffee shop all the time, and she has her what I call her little riding chair in the Jeep. And the coffee shop has on Thursdays, the owner brings their dog, which is a golden retriever. And the minute I pull up, the dog goes up to the stand like this to look out like this. And she wants to then get out of her little riding chair and stand on my shoulder. And they do this like stare down at each other. It's really, really friggin' funny. But yeah, guys, you have to, have something to not be exhausted about. Okay, let's see. Dora's got a question. I send Google Forms to clients to e-sign credit card authorization and liability waivers. Is there sufficiently legal, or does this have to have a DocuSign type forms? If I'd be concerned on that, Dora, I can't say that I have read up on the most recent laws, so I'm only answering it from what I believe to be true. But I'm going to say it this way, Dora. I think you're asking a very good and important question, right? I'm so sorry. I just see nothing on this call can possibly better than the last 2 minutes that just happened. Thank you. I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but laughing about that. But Dora, going back to your question, there are many laws that govern credit card data and collection of credit card data. Back in the days when it first started with the internet and the ability to take credit cards, and a lot of the third-party apps that are existing in today were not in place, you really, as somebody who took credit cards over your website, had to be really careful, and you can get sued and have a liability due to that. And so when you look at the third party apps that you're using, I'm going to say like a Square or something, just so you guys know what I'm talking about by third party apps, they are taking on the liability. And in that, they have to have encrypted data at all times. And so I would be a little concerned as a tax person and a finance CFO. I don't even like using Google Docs, to be honest, to share like somebody's data, somebody's financial data. So I definitely would be concerned about sharing the credit card authorization. So I think looking into that is a very important thing to do. And that brings me to another topic that I've, had several conversations this week, but I have conversations about it a lot. And that is where small businesses do something that makes logical sense to them. Okay, here's a Google Doc. I need to get a credit card authorized. Okay, I need to do this. I need to do that. And don't realize that they could be breaking big laws. I always say that there's no such thing as a small business anymore. And what I mean is that small businesses engage in collections, credit card authorizations. They do hiring, and now many of the laws affect if you just hire one person. They form the legal structures which have their own type of rules, etc. And so they easily can get involved in basically crimes that you wouldn't even think. Like for example, I tell this story before, so some of you may have heard it, but there was a company that came to me through the SBDC, and so I don't know exactly what happened prior, but they had a fraud and a lien on their homes, and it was due to the fact that they were using QuickBooks for their payroll. And I'm not a big fan of doing that. I want to use an ADP or a Paychex for payroll, because when you make a mistake on payroll, it comes under civil liability. And what happened is they collected the taxes on, like, I think they had 12 employees and they collected it on all 12. But somehow, when it was being transferred to the US Treasury, they didn't have it set up for two of them didn't get transferred. And it was a small amount. They didn't do the audits at the end of the year, which is what accountants always do, is they audit how much was sent to the US Treasury in relationship to the payroll, et cetera. And all this is kind of on your own if you don't have someone representing you to do these different forms and activities, right? So what happened is at the end of the year, and it's kind of an interesting process. When you send payroll into the US Treasury, it actually goes into IRS. So the amount of Social Security and Medicare that is collected by both the company and the individual in the paycheck, it gets submitted to IRS and then it gets transferred, whether funding or not. I think it's more paper transfer because I think it just uses one bank account in the government, but it gets transferred then, and then the Treasury keeps tabs like, okay, Lori Williams has this much Social Security and Medicare. And they're always going back and cross-referencing the data with these forms that some of you have employees are familiar with, the 940 and the 941s, right? And then they're checking it to how much was deposited in the Treasury. So the short way of saying this is there's a paper trail where eventually that catches up. Well, in the case of many things, and payroll being one of them, if even it's a mistake, it comes under a civil liability. The corporate structure does not protect you at all, and that comes under fraud. Even if it wasn't intended, it still comes under fraud. And one of the scary things about payroll, and I remember learning this when I went for my enrolled agent testing, and that is anyone who touches payroll is also responsible and brought up in the lawsuit. And I remember when I was taking my exam, thinking, oh my God, I can think of the small businesses where they have, just individuals that are admin, licking the envelope of the payroll, because in the testing it said, even if you're licking the envelope in the payroll, you would be liable. But I thought, well, that's one of those testing things that really isn't true. Well, fast forward. So they're going back to the story. So the SBDC client contacted me to talk about some things that they had as this fallout, and it ended up, guys, scary. He had a lien on his house, and his two daughters were also helping in payroll. guess what? Liens on their house too. And so, I really try to stress the importance of thinking these things through because everything sounds simple, like I'm just going to do this until you turn around and have to look at it. I had somebody today, or yeah, yesterday, I mean, who is setting up this tour company and it's in China, but they're wanting to take payments from Canada and do it in US and send it to the company in China that they also own, thinking it just made sense because the individuals be more comfortable paying in the US. I'm like, well, wait, you got to look at that system. You got to make sure it doesn't come under concerns on money laundering. And what does it take? And this individual was just aware of, okay, I got this and I want to do these cool tours, not thinking through the financial and legal ramifications. So it's really, really important to kind of check into those. And you can, what I always do is when a subject comes up, I'm never one, just like with your situation, Dora, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, that's good. I'm just going to say, I would be aware and I would have to check on it, right? And so I see what you're saying. It's collected over the phone, but still, it's not like the data is got to be secure, but the signature does not, right? So it goes all in the fraud type situation. And so, I can't say whether I would not personally be comfortable with that, And please, Dora, always feel free to have Sadie give you my email. We can look into it together so I can get the exact ruling, but I would not personally be comfortable because I can also see things like happening is if the the situation ends up where anything happens down the road, it could end up being where you don't get paid because you weren't securing it. Or, there's just so many consumer protection things. And if you think about it, whenever whenever we're dealing with money, that's kind of where you do the stop gap, if you will. When you're dealing with employees, when you're dealing with money, anything to do with finance, those are very heavily regulated. And when it has to do with the consumer or the employee, there's so many laws in place. So you have to look at it and say, what are the reasons that are all these third parties are in existence and everybody does it this way? Chances are because they're trying to keep something within some legal parameter, right? So you have to look at it and go, well, why is everybody else doing credit cards that way? Why is everybody do the third party? Why does Square do that? Going back, and I'm assuming this is still true. Like if you were to put a shopping cart, and got to understand what I'm saying here. I'm saying if you were to put a shopping cart on your website where you built the whole thing out, not like you use one of the third parties and you built the shopping cart, it's connected, because you may not realize it, but when you use anything like GoDaddy or any of those shopping carts, and I think most of you are aware of it from the business side, that it leaves your website and it goes over to GoDaddy, and that's where it's processed. Even though it looks seamless to the customer, like it's being processed on your website and it's made for that seamless look, it is not being processed on your website. It's being processed on the third party. Again, I'm using GoDaddy as an example. And there is another situation why everybody does that, because the companies that build out their own shopping environment, large corporations, they have to have everything encrypted and follow all the rules. And so that costs so much, it's cost prohibited really to a small company to build out the purchases on their own website. That's why you have all of these in existence, like the GoDaddies, etc. So, kind of like have it a little red flag where you look up and say, okay, what is going on here? Is this okay? Whenever you're touching anything with money, you're touching anything with employees, you're touching anything with legal, and that's where I tell people a lot, I'm all for DIY. Don't get me wrong. I completely am. I kid around, but it's the truth. I actually taught myself to use the table saw by watching a YouTube video. Okay. I don't think maybe that was wise, but I didn't have anybody to teach me. And, I still got my fingers, right? But even that I'm like, okay, let me learn how to use a table saw, right? I still feel very strongly that when it comes to finance, tax, and legal structures, it's not DIY. I have so many people that watch these, YouTube channels and they go, okay, and I've been seeing a lot of this where they then go to LegalZoom and they set up their own S Corp without having any idea what it means to be structured as an S Corp, right? And then they're like, oh, okay. Asked them, did you set up the stock book? Did you set up the stock register? Did you register with the Department of Oversight the stock? And they have no clue what I'm talking about. And there was a individual just recently that contacted me because this individual was trying to get a small business certification, one of the certification processes. And what happened is they were set up as an S corp. They did it through LegalZoom. They didn't LegalZoom does not counsel, does not go through it. They're just having you fill out the documents, right? So then they got through this entire process to the end and they said, send the stock register, which is a very viable question you would ask, And the woman was like, no, I don't have any stock. It's just me and the S corp. And she had no idea what she was talking about. And of course they were like, denied, you're out of here. You're not a legitimate company. And it's because when you are structured as a corporation, an S corp or a C corp, if you don't have stock dispersed, technically the company doesn't exist. And that's why the owners of this structure is called a shareholder because they hold shares. So it's like not fully set up. It's not established. You set up the articles of incorporation, you file those documents, I should say, is the best way to say it. And then what you do is you distribute the stock, even if it's just you as the only shareholder, you have to distribute stock to yourself and put it in stock certificates and register and meetings and etc. And that's when the company is fully set up. So if you didn't do that, it's not fully set up. Not to mention, and I know I'm all over the place, but that's what today is. And if I strike a chord with anybody, just put in, for me to explain more, I'm only touching these topics on the surface. But that's another thing that people do is they watch YouTube videos and they go, okay, I should be taxed as an S corp because of savings. But actually, David, what are you doing here? Oh, you have the link as a guest, David. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I
Look
thought
at David.
I thought I was a guest.
No,
Oh wait, I'm a viewer. I'm an observer to what you're
yeah,
doing.
yeah, so, yeah. Oh, I should have said you're like on the show right now.
Oh no, okay. I'm a viewer. See you soon.
We'll make you an attendee. We'll make you an
Okay,
attendee.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
Yeah.
So Sadie, yes, and yeah, they got him an attendee. That's funny. I had a new guest I didn't even expect. I don't even know what I was talking about after that. I was like, who's joining me? I know David said, hey, I want to join as a guest, and I gave him the link for the guest, but I think he still had the one as the speaker. But David, you're welcome to come speak. I got a feeling he wanted to be on to ask me a trick question. But anyway, going back to the S corporation, that what I was talking about is in order to have it beneficial on tax, you literally have to get somewhere around net income. I'm not talking about revenue, net income, about 40,000 at least. And before that, it costs you money. So a lot of people are really, signing up for these legal structures, not really understanding how it affects them. And then I have a lot of people, while I'm on topic, I'll tell you one more. I'm just like going over the week issues with people. And last week is people set up the LLCs and they don't realize that you have to pay $800 independent on whether you have any transactions at all. So guys, when you set up an LLC, and this is California's language, not mine, for the privilege of being incorporated in California, you have to pay the 800. And so that's due 2 months and 15 days, I think, when you set up. And then I think that's the exact time period. It may be a little bit off on that, but close to that. And then every single year at April 15th. And I'll have people say, well, I set up the LLC some years ago, but I didn't do anything with it. And I go, right away, red alert, did you pay the 800? No. Well, then it ends up 800 over every year and then times penalties, and you can't close it until you pay it. So you can really get in big trouble. It's kind of like I like to say, the high school or college kid that gets the first credit card, right? That they go out and they charge all this amount, and then it really changes the dynamics of their life for some years. And that's a scary thing. And that's what I'm seeing so many small companies getting themselves into trouble. Growing up on the farm like I did, I mean, I can't even say I lived in the country. I used to think I lived in the country, but now that I'm older, I realize I was podunk. I was so far removed from civilization. I was really, really far removed in the country. And you didn't have any stores stores whatsoever, no chain stores at all. You had small businesses, just mom and pops, right? And so in that, with the mom and pops, they pretty much did cash sales. They didn't have any Square or POS. I'm sure today they do, but back then they didn't. So what I'm saying is the small companies couldn't get into the amount of trouble that you can get into today. So just, be a little careful on these things. So Brenda, for small independent healthcare service-based businesses, what suggestion do you have to explain to employees who ask for increases yearly that outside of what is legally required? Is it difficult to keep the business running when insurance reimbursements continue to get cut? So Brenda, what you're asking, if I could paraphrase and you tell me if I don't have it right, and it's a good question, Brenda. Thank you for asking it. It's a time question that people have a lot. Employees are wanting raises beyond what the legal amount that they say you must get a raise. They want beyond that, which, that's the minimum. So it is true. A lot of people do want, beyond the minimum. That's a given. But really, the bottom line on this, Brendan, to all listening, it's not necessarily, if you will, this is going to be a strange answer, okay? But follow me on this. It's not so much that the employees are asking for above, it's whether or not the company can afford to pay it, okay? If the company can't afford to pay it, it doesn't necessarily matter whether they're asking above or not. The company can't afford to. Think of it on a personal level. If everybody wants to go on a trip to Disneyland and you don't have it in the budget, you can't go to Disneyland. So what happens in a personal budget is most people, not all, but most people recognize that if you don't have the money coming in, you can't do the thing. Oh God, that rhymed. I'm on a roll. If you don't have the money coming in, you can't do the thing. Sadie, I don't know. Is that a words of ingenious today? We may have to remember that one, right? Um, I'm tired today, so I'm just chatting out loud, right? But when it comes to a company, it's like that mentality goes away for some reason. I see it all the time. I mean, you have statements like, well, when we sell more, we're going to, we have extra money, but it doesn't mathematically calculate that way. The employees want raises, but we can't give it. At the end of the day, you can't give it, right? So if you don't have the funding, I used to, in fact, let me make this statement. Years ago, especially doing turnaround, I was working with this company and they had a lot of situations financially. And they had a lot of situations with employees wanting to get paid more than the company could pay. Now, that didn't mean that they weren't worth that amount of money. That didn't mean that they couldn't get a job somewhere else. That didn't mean any of it. It just meant the company didn't have the financials to pay that rate, right? And I would explain to the owners that, and this comes back from my biology training, if you will, and it was not in a negative way we use a host, but everybody, knows even a little bit of biology, that if there's an animal and there's a parasite on it or any kind of, animal that's a host, humans can be a host too, right? They can be a host. But if the host dies, the animal dies. You kill the host, everybody dies. And I would say, if you try to do an action for a few situations or a few employees and the whole company goes down, nobody has a job, right? You can't kill the host. But yet so many people hold on to, I'm going to hold on to this employee. I really can't afford to pay him, but I'm going to hold on to him. And then the whole company goes down. So at the end of the day, that's where I talk about the cost structure. You have to look at how much do we have in sales? How much do we have in expenses? How much do we have in overhead? What's left over, and that has to also pay for you and reinvestment in the company. And if that cost structure doesn't allow for certain things to be paid for, it's no different than the budget that you have on a personal to go to Disneyland. Okay, now if it is a situation where, and this people don't like to hear, but it's facts, it's true. I'm about speaking the truth and the facts, whether we like them or not. They're still like the sun comes up in the morning, right? And the fact is that if you don't have enough money coming in, sooner or later you can't borrow anymore and the company has to shut down, right? So you have to look at the business model and you have to say, okay, if I have to pay this rate to get this level of employee, but yet something like insurance reimbursements or something is keeping me from being able to, charge this amount, and this is my overhead. At the end of the day, the business is not working. Okay, it's just not working. You may have to pivot. You may have to shut the business down and get into another business. That's where big companies, they recognize that. Going back many years ago, this is like, you'll have to tell me if anybody even knows what I'm talking about. Jack Welch, okay, GE. This is going back to my early business trainings, right? I remember, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I remember Jack Welch had this theory, and I think, and I'm recalling from a while ago, he had to be like up number one or two in any industry, or he got out of the industry. Might have been one or three or something, but you had to be in this top category within an industry because GE was in a whole bunch of industries, General Electric. So he had to be in the top rung of any industry, and if he wasn't in the top rung of the industry, they got out of the industry. Now, the reasoning was so sound if you think about it, and I'll tell you his reasoning, guys. He said, if I'm not in the top three, I'm not, and I'm going to use the word trend setting, but it's not trend setting like the new clothes I'm wearing. I'm not commanding what the selling price is. I'm not commanding the highest employees. I'm not commanding this. I'm not in the top rung. And you got to think of where GE was competing. They were in the big runs of competition. And so basically then they're doing the following. They're having to charge a price that somebody else is setting, and they may not be able to afford to because of their expenses or their means to production, right? So he saw it that, well, if I'm putting the resources in this one company, one division, and it's not within the top rung, I'm not setting the pricing, I could be losing money. I'm better off taking those resources out and putting it over here where I can play in a level playing field, so to speak, right? Well, small companies have that same dynamics. Whether you're large or small, it's still a dollar. It's still 24 hours a day. Nothing changes, right? So the methodology still applies. And I always kid around that I'll see people hold on to a very bad business model and say, I'm going down with it. It's my company. And they'll leave a marriage after 30 years. I'm out of here. I'm tired of you not putting the toothpaste cap on, right? And so, what we have to understand as entrepreneurs is that as entrepreneurs, you ready for this, guys? We don't sell products or services. Okay? You ready for that? We don't sell products or services. Okay, that's news to you guys, right? So you're like, okay, Lori, where are you going with this? What do we sell? We sell our skills, talents, and abilities. Okay. What we do is we have a skill, we have a talent, we have an ability. The skill may be to buy up some other person's product and resell it on eBay or something, right? The skill may be like me, knowledge. I sell intellect is what I sell. But you have a skill. It could be to manage, it could be to find new markets, it could be to do so many things. So if everybody takes their business in their mind right now and take out fictitious, take out a piece of paper and write down, don't say, I sell this, or I sell cookies, or I sell cakes, or anything, but think about what skill, talent, and ability do you as the entrepreneur exhibit to do the selling of the product or service. That's your special sauce, guys. Now, the minute you look at what skill, talent, or special ability you have, you realize it can be packaged. So if you're playing over here in this world or industry and you can't get the product cost down enough to make a good profit margin and it's just kicking your butt, or you don't like it anymore, the competition's too myriad of reasons, right? You say, okay, I'm pulling out of that and I'm coming over here and I'm taking that skill, ability, and talent, and I'm doing this. And so that allows you to connect with yourself as an entrepreneur, not with your specific product. Okay. Think about this concept of so many companies fail so many times and entrepreneurs start multiple companies. What they're doing is they're looking for something that they can sink their teeth in that has traction. They're taking their skills, ability, and talents and seeing where it can be applied somewhere else. And the farther we move away where you say, I am my product, I am my service, if you can get away from that and say, I am an entrepreneur with these skills, talents, and abilities, it gives you the power to choose a business model that works. And more so, it gives you the power to leave a business model that's not working. And, literally breaks my heart to see so many people just go down hard financially, take huge financial hits, holding on to a business model that wasn't sustaining them. And they say, well, I need to make money. I hear this all the time. I'm like, you're putting money in the company. You're not making money. You're losing money. And you can tell it's an emotional thing because I'm showing them financially they're losing money. It doesn't make sense, but they're convinced it's the only thing they could do. They got to hold on to it or they have no income. And I'm like, no, you could go to the beach. And that's where I got the being more tired and more broke concept, guys, because they could let that go down and go to the beach. Now, it's a really, really hard thing when you're on that precipice. Do I just push the rock a little bit more and it'll go over and it'll fall, or is it not going to? And that's where you have to look at it financially. I look at statistical probability, I look at feasibility, and most importantly, I look at cash flow. How much cash do we need to get here? And do we have the cash? If we not, let's pull the cash back, pay off the debts we have, and get out of it. Take a breath, take a break, maybe take a nap, maybe go on vacation, come back and jump into something else that makes sense. I mean, I look at my life. I mean, I've always kind of been a consultant in many ways, but I have done so many different things and just kind of molded to what was going on. And I'm still clicking and doing it. And it's like during my, 30s and 40s, I was kind of seen sometimes as, she doesn't focus. She's been a banker, then she's a CFO, and now she's doing this, and she's also done that and everything. But now it's like, oh, wait a minute, look at all the skills, talents, and abilities that I got. I took, and some of you guys may know what I'm talking about, many may not, but neuralistic programming, NLP, became a practitioner. That made no sense, at all. But I found it fascinating. And you know what? That helped me in the turnaround because I totally understand human behavior. And, it helps me deal with clients because I understand it. So you have all these things that you explore. And life is about experiences and exploration. And it's not about stressing yourself out financially, getting to the bottom line and continuing to fall even farther and not being happy and being stressful. And so sometimes saying goodbye to the company and saying hello to a new one is the actual best thing that you can do. So, Brenda, that was a long answer to a question, but basically, at the end of the day, if you can't afford that, you can't afford it, right? You have to look at the business model and see if you can how you can work within the means. Can you adjust the price? Can you adjust the expenses? What other options can you do? But you have to always be respectful, everybody, of when the dollars aren't there, the dollars aren't there. And just getting a loan to carry you when you're losing money is never a good thing. Time frame and process for loan modifications, not really, but do join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's where we get really into that. So I don't want to take up this show for talking about the loans a whole lot, but there is no like this is the time and process, but I do talk about that a little bit. So Sadie, be sure to put the link in for our fire resource webinar so Shirag knows about it and can join us then, and I'll talk more about it then. Let's see. Dora, how do I get a website to be found on the first page of a Google search? I have keywords, but the SEO isn't finding my website in the search results, even 10 pages down. Okay, you're going to love this, and this is going to be Sadie doing some work. This is where you're going to contact the SBDC because we've got advisors that focus on nothing but SEO and websites, etc. And I can only tell you enough to be dangerous. And so with this, remember I always say DIY, legal finance, finance? I am not even going to attempt to answer it because my answer would be so limited and uneducated compared to the experts we have at the SBDC. So please look in the chat because Sadie's going to put in the SBDC. Sign up. It's at no cost. And literally, we have people that'll go through your SEO and they'll look at it and they'll give all kinds of good advice. I know many of these fellow advisors and they're friggin' awesome. So check it out. So totally check it
Oh,
out.
Lori, you know what else I put in the chat? Because sometimes people are kind of like, can you tell me a little bit more about the SBDC? Also put the link in for the workshops, just to give you an idea of all the different workshops that we have. And I literally did a scroll. Like, I think today let me see, today's the 16th, right? Oh, it's overlapping. There was a webinar called SEO Reimagined. How is AI transforming e-commerce search visibility? So that's just, like I said, a little example. I just literally clicked on that workshops link.
Perfect. And Sadie, you're absolutely right. Thanks for bringing that up. There is a ton of workshops on that topic. Marketing, SEO, advertising websites. That's a hot topic at the SBDC. There's a lot of advisors that talk on that. There's not that many advisors that, well, there's no one that's finance, tax, and legal structures like I am. So it's not a lot on that have that combined talent. But when it comes to SEO and marketing, we have a lot to choose from. So do check that out because they can walk you through the entire process. I see Chris. We were talking about before. We were like, Chris is a common name. Chris. Yep. You can't trick Lori. I like that. People can trick me. I just am good at faking it like they didn't. Was the 800 delay for the Los Angeles County due to the wildfires? No, it was not. There was only one time in existence that the 800 was, an exemption, if you will. That's the word they used. And that was during COVID for the first year. And it really was because so many companies were being shut down. They wanted to entice people to start LLCs. Okay. But no, I usually don't see the franchise tax board making any type of adjustments to the $800 per year. So nope, was not. David, I'm starting to make TikTok videos as a consultant. What is the right balance between being catchy and sensational versus accurate to get attention and providing context? It often feels impossible in 1 to 2 minute second video. Okay, interesting answer to David. I knew you'd have a tricky question. David always finds a way to get a question in when Lori's answering questions. I'm going to tell a story to answer that, but it will make a lot of sense. When I was doing turnaround, right? The conversation I would have because people had CFOs and stuff, I would come in and it would be, what's your profitability? We use all these financial terminology and we talk the same language. And all I would talk about is profitability and net income and all these different subjects, right? So decades ago, I'm talking past history, I really wanted to begin communicating to the small businesses. I wanted to go back to my roots being, born in the country. I wanted to help small businesses. Hello, it worked. I got there, right? But when I first was attempting to, I actually started doing, what are they called when you sit in person? Oh, seminars. That's the word. I had to think about it. Haven't used it. And seminars, right? So I started this series of seminars. And I was so excited because I was going to teach the small businesses how to look at their financials. And it was so important, right? So I start these seminars and I had to do marketing for it. And I had to, like you're doing, David, it wasn't a video, but I had to write a small paragraph because it was being offered in the LA Business Journal, et cetera. So I had like this much space to talk about, what the webinar, or I'm sorry, the seminar, I don't even know how to say the word seminar, was about. So in my few sentences to advertise this seminar, I was like, are you aware of your profitability, right? I thought, oh my God, the doors are going to be swung open and people are going to be running because I'm talking about profitability of the small companies. Crickets. I was like, why is this not happening? And then all of a sudden, the second time I offered my seminar, the doors were flying open, but it was so fascinating because I wanted to do this to talk to small businesses. And instead, I was getting banks sending their employees to get trained through me. It was crazy stuff, right? And I'm like, I'm still not reaching out to the small company. Well, it's so obvious to me now, but at that point, I couldn't see it. I wasn't even saying anything they understood. Small companies weren't going around going, I'm concerned about my profitability. That was the CFO language, right? So one night, right as I was falling asleep, And I was doing the usual, like small businesses, and we all do at night. Anything we're worried about, we think about at night, right? And then we try to get a good night's sleep. And then we wake up in the morning, we think about it some more, right? So I sat down and I asked myself a simple question. Those of you who've been around me, I always say it's the power of questions. And so the question was, what do small businesses go to bed worried about and wake up in the morning worried about? And I thought about my own experience as a small business, especially in my 20s and 30s. I was afraid my company was going to fail. That's what I was afraid of. I was afraid it was going to shut down. I was afraid that because of my lack of understanding, my company was going to fail. So I rewrote that little bit of copy that said, are you afraid your company will fail? Do you not understand the numbers or something? I don't remember what I said, but it was like, are you afraid your company would fail? The doors swung open. The seminars became a big hit and it was a huge money making. So, David, when you have to communicate to an audience to get their attention in a very few words, and especially if you're professional services, which is what we're talking about, think about what it is that your customer most worries about and communicate that worry and communicate that you can do the solution. It goes back to that need, etc. But in that, I literally took the words that were in their head and put it within my marketing. So that's, many of those things, it takes a long time for you to play with different words and wordsmith. But if you look at making sure as your little quality check when you get done with your video, am I speaking to them about the biggest concerns they have? Number one, am I communicating in a way that they believe I can solve it and I have the skills, talents, and ability to do so? So my step process for that is one, figure out what they're worried the most about and speak to that. Number two, speak to your company in such a way that they feel as though you are reliable, dependable, and have a solution. So that would be my long answer for that. Joe, would you say it's best file sole proprietorship as a new business, then convert to an LLC as a bookkeeping business to have constant clients? I talk about this during my webinars on legal structures, which I have the one tomorrow and I do every single month. I don't want to like get into a long discussion on to get all the detail, but one, you're welcome to set up a appointment with me so I can go into specifics or watch my webinar. A sole prop and an LLC is taxed the exact same way. Many people start an LLC thinking they're getting some additional tax credits. That's not true. It's taxed the same way, same form, okay? Exact same form. So the only reason you would start an LLC over a sole prop is if, well, some reasons, but one of them would be if you feel as though there is a strong legal reason. Now, many times what people do is they see a YouTube and they say, well, if you're not an LLC, you won't be able to protect your assets. It's not telling the whole story, guys. It's like if I said to you, well, if you don't have a $3 million life insurance policy, you're crazy. And then you go, well, I don't make 3 million. I don't even have any kids. Well, you're still crazy. I mean, you'd show more discernment. You would ask questions about it. So let's dig deeper into what exactly is this asset protection mean? Well, what it means is if somebody sues you, they can only sue you up until the amount that the LLC owns. So the concept is, say the LLC's got 50,000 in the bank, they can sue the LLC up to 50,000, and you've got $1 million home, they can sue you up to 1 million. That is the concept, that the fear that people get forced into the LLC. Now let's back up. And let's go with web design. I like using this example. So if I create a web page and somebody doesn't like it and they complain, more than likely I'll go, here's the money back, right? I would have to either in small claims court, which is a pain in the you know what, or I would have to hire a lawyer. I'd have to pay a lawyer to do the discovery phase to then get a jury, I should say, a jury to agree that you have done so much egregious damage with the website you created for me that I need to sue you, and I can actually sue you beyond what the sole prop would be. I can take the house, right? So you have to think through it logically. I mean, one of the chances of being sued, I mean, if anybody should be sued for bookkeeping, you would think QuickBooks would. They're not. You don't see a lot of people going around suing on this level for bookkeeping, right? So a lot of times when people are just starting a company, they immediately go, I got to protect my assets, but they don't logically think, what is the chance of being sued? Now, even if somebody does sue you, you will still have to pay out of your pocket, which is no difference if it's the business or you, the money for the discovery phase, right? So what is far better to do, whether you form an LLC or not, is to get, this time I will talk about an insurance, and that's errors and omissions. It's E&O insurance. And E&O insurance used to be called professional services insurance, and it can be written, a policy can be written to specific situations. So you can say, if somebody sues me because there was an error on their accounting documents, you can get an insurance policy, and you have to read the policy, but many of them will also cover the cost in the discovery phase, right? So, people think that this LLC is this like shield, and you first have to say, what is it really shielding me against? Do I need that shield? Is it worth $800 a year? And do I even have the money if somebody sued me? Wouldn't it be better off maybe just getting an insurance policy? So the answer can never be answered in a just a soundbite, which is what this is. So that's why I say, in order to fully answer the question, you have to understand exactly what you're doing, what are the situations, what's the risk tolerance. And what I like to do is go into really big detail on what these structures mean and allow the person to make the decision for themselves. That's what I'm all about, right? So I can't say whether you should be an LLC or should be a sole prop. I'm a soundbite here with a little bit more information. But what I am saying, guys, is don't just, think because you saw somebody say, oh, you should form an LLC to be a legitimate company and save your assets. That is partial truth at best. Do know that there's more involved in it. And too many people open the LLCs, then they realize they have to pay the 800, they have to finish up with the filing, and then they end up closing the company and they have to dissolve it. So you want to, it's just like you don't want to go through, the drive-through after partying all night in Las Vegas and get married. I don't think that's probably a good idea. You want to kind of get to know the person a little bit more. So let's say maybe you want to get to know where the business is going. You want to have a better feel for where the business is going before you just automatically jump in and say, hey, I'm going to, open an LLC. It's like, I talk about this a lot. It's like people just think, well, I got an idea, let me open an LLC, instead of like, what is actually going to happen? Dip the toe in a little bit more before you jump right in. Okay, so that's a long story answer on that as well. I think I got all the questions that were put into the chat. Derek, you have a question about the bio. I'm not sure what you're asking. Can you give me a little bit more information on what you're asking on that one? I'm not sure. And you're very welcome. So we got 8 more minutes. I can ramble on something else, but if anybody has something they want to ask, please ask away. One thing I wanted to mention, I talked about this before. We have a lot of companies that are service-based companies. Some of you guys offer products with a bit of service, but a lot of you guys offer services. And I just want to chat a few minutes about the importance of financially analyzing your time. When you sell a service, what you're really, really selling is time. Okay, you're selling an hour. So if I was to sell a chair, I could understand that I buy wood, I buy glue, I buy nails. And if I said to you, well, I'm going to build and sell chairs, but I don't really know how much the chair costs. Does that really matter? Does it really matter that I don't know? And you'd go, oh my God, yeah, you really do need to know how much the chair costs. You can't go around selling chairs without knowing how much the cost is, right? Most people would acknowledge that. But yet, people that sell services aren't calculating how much time they're putting into a project. Let me go back with the website for a second. Somebody may say, okay, I'll do a website for 2 or 3,000. I don't know if that's the right number. I'm just throwing it out. And internally, they may calculate it's X amount of hours, but they never really analyze and keep some kind of a time chart to see if it really did take those amount of hours. That's like building a chair and it costing you way more in wood than you thought. Obviously, you did not make the money on that chair like you intended, or worse yet, you may have lost money on that chair. Okay. So when we talk about service-based businesses, we really have to, even if it's our own time, we have to look at how much did we plan on making per hour as a cost. I usually put a cost in my models for service-based companies that are the minimum that I need to make, or the amount that I would have to replace if I hired someone else. I use all kinds of different ways of looking at it. And then I have a markup that is actually what the client is paying. It's not necessarily a markup, but I'll say, like, I'm making up numbers here, they mean nothing, but I'll say, okay, if I'm selling this at $150 an hour, even if it's a website at 3,000, if I'm saying I want to get paid 150 an hour, maybe 75 is the lowest I'll go. And then I make sure that I calculate the number of hours in the website and I multiply by 150 to make sure that I'm using my time. My wood cost X amount per board, my time cost 150 per hour. Okay. Then you have to calculate how many hours you put in, because when I get people to do that, I say, just do some calculations for a month. You would not believe how many people find out that they're getting paid sometimes actually a third, if not less, than what they thought they were getting. They go, oh, I'm getting 150 an hour. And then they look at it and they're not even getting $20 an hour, because they're not calculating in all the other time that they spent on things, right? So that's number one, not properly estimating your time, not analyzing it if you used your time correctly, not putting a dollar amount on your time. And I'm not saying we shouldn't sell projects like a website for 3,000 or whatever, but you have to look at the time on that. Then the number two thing they do is they say, okay, I'm a solopreneur, which has the ability to make actually more money than a lot of the companies today. But they say, okay, well, what if I get X amount of clients and I work 30 hours? Well, you have to look now at what's billable versus non-billable. And when you look at things like, I got to do invoicing, I got to do admin, I got to keep up with, any kind of legal records, I got to look for new clients, I got to do all this. You got this whole long list of things you do that is considered not billable, non-billable time. And when I look at somebody's timesheets and we're, doing some kind of analysis within the company, it can be as much as 60% of their time is non-billable. Okay. So that means only 40% of the time within a month is actually billable time. So then you take that 40 percent of the time, whether you base it on, 40 hours a week or whatever, but you can take that percentage and you could say, I need to bill at this per hour with these number of hours in order to make my financial goals. Okay, so now you know how many billable hours you need per month based on the time allotment you even have, because you can't get more time. Just like you can't create more wood without buying it, you can't get more time without utilizing it, right? And then you have to look at, well, do I have enough marketing to get that amount of clients? So there is a mathematical equation for service-based businesses to make sure you're meeting your financial goals and you're allocating your time properly. And once again, it's all based on time. Like if I walk dogs, I'd have a different amount I'd get paid for an hour than if I was a lawyer, but it's still 24 hours. It hadn't changed time. So if you're a service business out there, really consider the fact that you sell time, and get some numbers around the amount of time. Even if you just take one project and monitor your numbers a little bit more, you might be shocked to find out that you're maybe not getting the amount that you think, and then you're wondering why, you're not making the amount of money that you want to make. Derek, you're talking about the BOI. That is temporarily on hold for any domestic company. So until, laws change all the time, so I can never say, but as of right now, I don't hear it resurfacing at all. So you do not have to worry about it. And workshops on grants and grant writing, Sadie put the document, or put the link to the workshops in. I don't see a lot on grant and grant writing, because that's a thing within itself, but that doesn't mean that someone within the SBDC network does not have somebody that is addressing that. And let's see, I would like to get connected with an advisor that is familiar with the trucking industry or any resources available. I'm a sole operator looking to expand. Please do reach out to Sadie has the link in there to contact the SBDC. We have a lot of individuals that are familiar with the trucking industry, and it depends on what topic, that you can basically get with somebody on either marketing or sales or contracting. Exports is another, not with trucking, but it's another topic that we have a lot of advisors talking about. So you can get with anybody on SBDC to get somebody specific to your industry at all as well. Anytime it's finance, tax, or legal structures, I've been through all industries, so it doesn't really matter what industry is anybody in. But if you want to know specific about certain things or laws or something specific to the industry, there's people within the SBDC that are industry specific as well. Okay, Sadie, I think I got through all the questions. So
I know there's one. There's one. I don't think we have seen your menagerie that you have at home. I have not seen any deer pictures. I have not seen any squirrels.
Okay, okay. So yeah, I'll show you right before we go. Sadie wants to see, and every single time before we start, guys, before we start, I share a picture of my backyard with Sadie because I have a backyard that has squirrels and deer and you name it. And every morning I sit out there. So let me find one of my most recent deer pictures. Okay, here is a picture of my two favorite little critters that come by in morning and afternoon for breakfast and for dinner. My little deer and the babies. So yeah, I have two deer, seven squirrels, tons of birds, and I have a new visitor that I'm not extremely excited about. And Sadie named my new visitor Tony Soprano because my big black bear that came into my backyard real close to me that I told it to scoot looked at me like, "Who you talking to? You talking to me?" And Sadie named him Tony. So yeah, I got a new black bear in my backyard as well, which I'm not too excited about my new little friend there. But I love animals. I love outdoors, and I bought a piece of property in August. I had this great idea. I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be fun to buy a lot and develop the lot? It seemed like it would be a great, exciting adventure. Someday we'll talk about what it means to buy a lot and excavate and build and all the things that I'm doing. It's pretty involved, but it's quite an adventure. So guys, I hope you learned something today. I answered some of the questions. Like I said, I try to do this every once in a while because I never know where the topic goes, but there's always questions to be asked and answered. Please do reach out to the SBDC to get with advisors. It's a great network, and there's so many people out there on so many levels of different intellect and workshops, etc., that it's a great resource for you. So yes, and like Sadie said, that your tax dollars at work, so you want to take advantage of it. Thank you, everybody that asked a question today. Sure do appreciate it. Thank you, David, for coming on as the potential guest in for the interview as well. So I appreciate all of you out there every single week. Join me next week where we talk about tax strategies, and I'm really excited to hear about all the different tax strategies that will be suggested and have that kind of conversation. It'll be a good one to have. So, Sadie, I'm going to hand this back to you for you to take over. So I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for being here for Ask Lori Anything. And thank you, our frequent flyers that come to the show every single week. And if you were new, please join us next week where it's not me just talking, that we actually have a guest, and we usually do. But I do like to have these every once in a while to reach out to everybody. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Alrighty, guys. So Lori is off doing her amazing financial strategy work right now. But what I'm going to do is just going to hang out. This is what I love doing for you guys because I know we're so focused on Lori when she's talking. So, and we had a lot of activity in the chat today. So I am going to put Lori's upcoming webinars. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see those. So I'm just going to put those guys in there for you. And we did have a lot of questions about how do I sign up for the SBDC? Because what, like, right, it's like one of those little hidden gems. Like you're like, what's this SBDC? Like I said, we basically just call them. call them or sign up online. It's no cost. This is literally your tax dollars at work. And what I think is so amazing about the SBDC, yes, I am a little partial, but everyone is a subject matter expert in their field. So Lori is a subject expert matter in financing, things when it comes to like IRS, loans, dealing with banking. But what about access to capital? What about marketing? What about AI? What about, like I said, the list goes on. So here's the first little thing, right? We're just, kind of do I know a little bit about, the organization? Because when I don't know if you're here for the beginning of the session, but we have several locations in Los Angeles, Ventura, and Santa Barbara County. So those are our regions, right? So if you go to here, this little workshops link, these are just workshops that are at all the various centers, and you don't even have to be a client. Like kind of like the way you signed up for Small Biz Talk, you might not be a client, right? But you signed up for the workshop. The same thing with this work, the workshops link, just to give you an idea of all the different kinds of workshops that we have. But I always tell everyone, you know what? Sign up as a client for the SBDC because you are going to get one-on-one business advising. So the way it works, and like I said, I love it. I've been working with the SBDC for over six some odd years. The Spanish initiative that I first started with, they just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. So you know that the SBDC has been around for a few, and we are all about supporting small businesses in our local communities. So like the way I can always explain it to folks, it's like, how when people go to college or they have friends in the biz, right? And you're like, oh, let me just call so and so, or oh, I know this person in the banking, vice president over at bank. Well, we kind of have that little network group going on for us. So if you have your one-on-one business advisor, connect with them, you talk about things, they give you advice, and then you kind of just start, going through the process. Like here, where you just ask questions, you say, hey, I want to learn more about access to capital. They might not be the subject matter expert in access to capital, but they're going to put you in touch, connect you with, right? The network. They're going to connect the dots for you and say, hey, I have this, business advisor over at this center over here that is a subject matter expert in this field. We really do have relationships with loan officers and people like that at banking. Like I'm not saying like, oh, don't worry about it, we'll get it for you. No, 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 no. But what I'm saying is it's all about just having information, right? Having access to the information. Because if you don't know where to start, you don't know what the process is, like how do you know how to do things unless you have the information how to do things, right? So that's why I say it's great to connect with the SBDC so you can go through the process, get to know the network, and form a great relationship with your business advisor, and then your business advisor is going to know about you, right? And again, like if things come up, right? What if like a grant comes up? What if an opportunity comes up where it's for you? Like sometimes like that's what happens. Like right now there I do believe there is kind of like a cohort kind of thing. You can do classes with it's called like Verizon Academy. You do these online classes with Verizon Academy, and I don't know all the specifics about it, but it's like if you go through this Verizon Academy, then you can sign up for grant opportunities. Like, and I mean, they're in the thousands, and this is what happens. It's Verizon's not going to email or text message every single small business owner, right? They come to us and they say, hey, we're Verizon and we want to do some social responsibility and, give grant opportunities to small business owners. And it might be because of the business that they're in. Is it like the field, was it because of the wildfires? Like I said, we don't know, but this is what happens. So these major corporations do have these grant opportunities sometimes, and they'll connect with us, and we put this in our newsletters. If you have a small business advisor that you already have a relationship with, they're gonna, email you, or you can touch base with them, and they'll be like, "Hey, did you hear about this grant opportunity from Verizon?" And as I said, it's all about just having this ongoing relationship. So, as I said, I love the SBDC. I cannot speak enough good things about them. So I'm just gonna hang out for a bit, just so you guys can make sure that you go through all the links, get all the fun stuff. If you have any like specific questions, but yeah, like I said, it's no cost. It's your tax dollars at work. We're we're feel good people. I'm not gonna lie. We like the way we measure ourselves is our success is your success. So we love helping you guys because this is literally what our job is. All right, and now I feel too happy, goody over here. All right, I'm gonna put myself on mute, but I'm gonna leave everything for you guys. Okay.